I practically grew up under the lavender-scented ceilings of Eden Glow Spa. While other kids were off at summer camps or learning to ride bikes, I was folding warm towels labeling essential oils and watching my mother carefully adjust magnifying lamps as she showed new estheticians how to perform a pour-perfect facial. I was 8 when I first helped file client notes, 14 when I memorized the entire booking system by heart, 20 when I took over operations. I'm Danielle, 32, and until recently, I was the invisible backbone of my family's wellness empire. Eden Glow wasn't just a brand. It was a legacy, one I believed I was born to carry. My grandparents started with a single massage chair in a rented storefront. My parents turned it into a regional chain with 6 locations. And me, I was supposed to be the next in line. The one who modernized the brand, digitized everything, brought in celebrity partnerships, and handled everything from lease negotiations to staff drama. Except, no one ever said that. They just let me believe it. For over a decade, I worked 70-hour weeks without a title that matched my responsibility. I hired staff, built training programs, crafted treatment protocols, designed product lines. When a location flooded, I was the one hauling boxes of skincare out of the basement. When a senior esthetician quit mid-client, I'd roll up my sleeves and step in without blinking. I even handled damage control when one of our essential oils got recalled. People often joked, "Wow, Danielle, do you ever sleep?" I'd laugh. But inside I kept thinking, one day they'll make it official. One day I'll walk into a room and be introduced as co-owner. One day my mom will finally say she's proud of me, not just thankful I stepped in. But that day never came. And while I was building the business, my younger sister Lily was building a following. She was the brand's face, if you could call it that. Polished, playful, always camera-ready. She posted morning routines, spritzed serums on TikTok, and name-dropped our spa in every Instagram caption. She didn't handle clients, didn't know how to balance a quarterly report. She couldn't name a single esthetician we'd hired last year. But Lily got flown out for influencer brunches, given a spa-branded Audi, and somehow ended up on the cover of Wellness Weekly as a young industry disruptor. The photo shoot scheduled during the same weekend, I canceled my vacation to patch an HR disaster at our flagship. "Don't be jealous," my mom had said that week, stirring almond milk into her coffee. "You're the dependable one. She's just the sparkle." It didn't hurt because of Lily. It hurt because of them, because I had spent my life proving I could be trusted. I thought that would mean something, but in our family, sparkle spoke louder than sacrifice. I kept brushing it off, told myself I was playing the long game, that they needed her for marketing and me for everything else, that when the time came, they'd split things fairly, that loyalty mattered. But sometimes when I caught a glimpse of Lily's latest unboxing video in the break room captioned, "My family's spa secrets," I'd feel this strange hollow ache in my chest. Like I was watching someone steal a house I'd built brick by brick, decorating it with fairy lights and filters, while I was still downstairs fixing the plumbing. And no one even thought to say thank you. Not once. There were nights I stayed at the spa until 1 a.m., the floor echoing with nothing but the hum of air purifiers and the low tick of the security lights. I'd rework payroll, fix booking bugs, reorder backbar inventory, or just sit with a staff member crying over burnout. My hands weren't calloused from lifting weights, but from rewriting policies no one thanked me for. Meanwhile, Lily's biggest stress was which hashtag performed best on her new skincare reel. She'd breeze in around 11, always in a cloud of expensive perfume and a fresh blowout sunglasses still on latte in hand. The front desk girls would light up when she walked in, not because they respected her, but because she was good for morale, good for Instagram, good for making us look more youthful. She'd take a few selfies, test a new serum on the back of her hand, film a 30-second video, and vanish before noon. But what really made it sting wasn't just the contrast, it was how our parents responded to it. They loved her brand. "Oh, Lily's reach grew by 2,000 this week," my dad would beam. "She's getting attention from those wellness retreats in Arizona. That could open doors for us." Doors for who? Because the last time I suggested opening a location outside the state, they told me we needed to be more conservative with risk. But if Lily posted one photo with a teal smoothie bowl, suddenly we were innovators again. At first I tried to justify it. We had different roles, different strengths, but the lines kept blurring. Once at a staff meeting, my mother introduced Lily as our future. It wasn't a joke. I laughed anyway because that's what I'd trained myself to do: smile, nod, swallow, and then do the real work when everyone else had left. I remember one Tuesday, quiet gray skies, low bookings. Our signature face mask had just been reformulated, and the new batch caused breakouts in 5 clients. I spent the day contacting them personally, sending apology kits, issuing full refunds, and writing a long report on product protocols. Lily, that same day, posted a video with the faulty mask and tagged the brand as her holy grail. She got 18,000 views. I got a migraine. Later that week, I sat in on a budget meeting. My parents were reviewing expenses and asked why the marketing line was so high. I told them, influencer fees, sponsored content, travel reimbursements, all tied to Lily's activities. My mom shrugged. That's the cost of doing business these days. But when I proposed hiring an assistant for HR so I could delegate one of my hats, we're not made of money, Danielle. It was always the same pattern. Her chaos was potential. My stability was invisible. Even the employees noticed. Some started calling me the shadow partner, a nickname that was supposed to be funny. But I heard the truth in it. I was the one behind the curtain pulling all the strings making the spa run. Yet when awards came in, Lily was the one posing with the trophy. I told myself I didn't care about credit. But that wasn't true. I cared deeply. I just didn't know how to ask for recognition without sounding bitter. And besides, asking implied I still believed they'd give it. The truth was I had stopped expecting anything. No title, no ownership, no thank you, just silence. And silence, when you've spent your life screaming through your actions, is the cruelest response of all. There was a time I still believed they'd see me. Not just notice me, but see me. The long hours, the sacrifice, the quiet strength I carried through every crisis. I clung to that belief like it was the last warm thing in a freezing room. One afternoon, I stayed behind after closing to reset the retail display. Our product rep had dropped off limited edition serums, and I wanted everything perfect before the weekend rush. Lily had filmed a haul video that day, her 5th that week, and left the samples in chaos. Half-open bottles, fingerprints on the glass boxes tossed like tissue paper. I stayed until 11:30 p.m., reboxing everything, cleaning, relabeling. The next morning, Mom walked past the shelves and smiled. "Lily, this is gorgeous," she said. "Great job, sweetheart." I was standing 5 feet away. My mouth opened then closed again. What was I supposed to say? "Actually, I stayed up late fixing the mess your favorite left behind. It would make me sound petty, small, ungrateful. And if there's one thing daughters like me are trained to never be, it's ungrateful." So I smiled. I always smiled, because if I didn't, I'd start crying. And I didn't know how to stop once I did. I started staying later, working harder. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I gave more, they'd finally admit what I meant to them. I started tracking every success client retention, 5-star reviews, net profits by quarter. I printed reports, highlighted trends, wrote summaries. I gave them a folder one Sunday at dinner, just so you can see how things are progressing. My dad flipped through it, nodded, then pushed it aside and asked Lily about her new ring light. That folder sat untouched on the sideboard for weeks. Sometimes I'd check to see if it had been moved. It never was. I wish I could say I had a breaking point then, but I didn't. Not yet, because deep down I still thought I just had to earn it harder. They had to love me. They had to. I was doing everything right. One Friday, we got nominated for a regional small business award. The email came in the morning. I opened it in the break room, barely breathing. "This is incredible," I whispered. "We made it." I texted the team. Everyone was thrilled. Even Lily posted an old photo of herself holding a branded candle with the caption, "Hard work pays off. So proud of our journey." She hadn't written the award submission. She hadn't pulled the numbers, written the vision statement, submitted the team profiles. That was me. All me. I didn't care about the photo. I just hoped maybe this time I'd be the one they thanked in the speech. Maybe I'd finally hear my name said with pride in front of people who mattered. But the night of the ceremony, Lily accepted the award. Mom and Dad flanked her on either side, all glowing and camera ready. I stood behind them, holding someone's purse because there hadn't been a seat for me at the front table. When the host asked who made the magic happen, my mother laughed lightly and said, "It's a family effort, but our Lily. She's the heart of it." I clapped. I smiled for the cameras. I even held her award for the post-ceremony photos when her arms got tired. No one asked where my name was on the plaque. I didn't expect them to anymore, but that didn't stop it from hurting like hell. About a month after the award ceremony, my father called a family strategy meeting. He said it was time to talk about the future of Eden Glow. Just hearing those words made my heart flip. Finally, I thought, this was it. I spent 2 nights prepping. I built out projections for the next 5 years, researched expansion opportunities, even ran competitive analysis on new med spa technologies we could implement. I wore my best blazer, the navy one I usually saved for big investor meetings. I even curled my hair. Silly, I know, but I wanted to look like someone worthy of being taken seriously. When I walked into the room, they were already sitting, Dad, Mom, and Lily. 3 cups of tea on the table. No fourth, no agenda, no projector, just a laptop in front of Lily and a stack of glossy folders labeled Lily Glow. I sat slowly. My father cleared his throat. "Danielle, we're making some shifts in brand direction." He didn't look at me when he said it. Lily smiled too wide. "We're thinking of rebranding the spa under a more modern umbrella. Something fresh, digital-forward, personality-driven. Something built around the face people recognize." I stared at her. My mother chimed in like it was already decided. "Clients love Lily. Her following has doubled. Investors are more excited when she's in the room." I swallowed hard. "So what happens to Eden Glow?" "Oh, it'll still exist," Lily said, flipping her hair, "but as a sub-brand, the classic line, like legacy products. Legacy." That word landed like a punch. "So I'm being moved under your umbrella now?" I asked, my voice quiet but steady. They all exchanged looks. That rehearsed kind of silence that screams louder than words. "No one's being moved," Dad said carefully. "We're just streamlining leadership." That was the moment it hit me, not all at once, but like a slow, creeping wave rising higher with every breath. This wasn't a conversation. It was a rollout. Something had already been signed, decided, maybe even funded. And I wasn't part of it. I asked the only question I could still form. Am I still part of ownership? My mother hesitated. Just enough. And that hesitation said everything. "We'll talk through the details in due time," Dad replied too fast. "What matters is that the brand is evolving and Lily is the best public face to carry us forward. Public face. Not operations, not structure, not responsibility. Just the part that shines." I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight shift in my chest. Something small and central cracked, like a hairline fracture you don't see until the whole wall gives way. I nodded, and I left the meeting. I didn't cry. Not then. But that night I stayed late at the main location, just walking, touching the glass of the treatment rooms, checking the laundry room, rereading the thank you cards some of our oldest clients had written to me over the years. One read, "Thank you for always being here when no one else was." I sat on the floor of the break room with that card in my hand for a long time. The lights buzzed overhead. The silence was deafening. I didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of the end. The part of the story where you stop asking for love and start looking for the truth instead. The rebranding happened faster than I expected. New signage, new packaging, new logo files I hadn't approved started appearing in internal chats. Suddenly, Eden Glow was just a subline on a flashy website banner reading Lily Glow by Eden. A subtle demotion, quiet, polished, strategic. My inbox filled with questions from staff. Are we changing protocols? Do we still carry our original product lines? Are we getting new uniforms? I had no answers. Because I wasn't in the meetings anymore. No one said it out loud, but I wasn't copied on leadership emails. I was left off group invites. The Monday calls I used to lead were now hosted by a new PR director. Lily had hired some guy named Hunter with a perfect jawline and zero spa experience. He'd start every call with "Lily's vision this week is," like she was some kind of messiah. I started noticing the smallest things disappearing first. My office nameplate was replaced with a generic manager. My access to the payroll system revoked without explanation. And the intern I trained for 6 months reassigned directly to Lily's new content team. They moved her desk next to the ring light setup. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Not violent, just invisible. One morning, I walked into the break room and found the fridge filled with pressed juices labeled Lily Glow Cleanse Launch. I hadn't heard anything about a product launch, and sitting there laughing with 2 new marketing hires was Lily, in head-to-toe athleisure, snapping selfies with the neon pink bottles. "Oh," she said when she saw me. "Danielle, didn't know you were in today." I stood there, still holding my keys. "I'm here every day." She blinked, then turned back to her phone. That night, I opened my desk drawer and found it mostly empty. Files I'd kept for years, client notes, vendor lists, tax forms were gone. Transferred for central access, someone told me later. I started to feel like a guest in the building I had once run. Worse than a guest, a ghost. And yet I kept showing up. Why? Because part of me still hoped someone would realize what was happening, that there had been a mistake, that I'd walk into a room and find my mother waiting with a coffee and a quiet apology, that she'd say, "We lost our way, but you've always been the one holding this together." But she didn't. One afternoon, I found her in the treatment hallway chatting with a junior staffer. I waited for a moment when I could slide in just to catch her alone. "Mom, do you have a second?" I asked gently. She turned her smile faltering just for a second. "Actually, Lily and I are headed to a brand shoot. Rain check." I nodded. She squeezed my arm. "You're doing great, Danielle. Keep things stable for us while we push forward." Stable. That word again. I was the anchor they had no intention of raising. I walked out to the front desk and looked around the lobby. The walls were the same. The chairs, I picked out the lighting. I adjusted the playlist I curated. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a stage someone else was performing on. And I was just the tech in the back making sure the spotlight hit her at the perfect angle. For the first time in my life, I let the thought settle fully. They never intended to share this with me. I wasn't being tested. I was being replaced, quietly, deliberately. And I'd let them do it because I kept believing family would never cast you aside like this. But mine had. And the worst part? They were smiling the whole time. I don't know the exact moment I stopped hoping. Maybe it was the staff meeting I wasn't invited to where Lily announced her vision for 2024, like a politician launching a campaign. I watched it later on the company Slack. Someone had uploaded a clip with the caption, "Queen Energy." She stood in front of the full staff smiling like a pageant winner and said, "This business was built on intuition, not spreadsheets. We're entering our emotional era." The room laughed. I didn't. Because I'd spent the last decade buried in those spreadsheets tracking revenue spikes, negotiating vendor rates, managing scheduling software with 3 dozen moving parts, and now all of that was being dismissed with a glittery one-liner. She called it intuition. I called it marketing over muscle. But no one cared what I thought anymore. Later that week, I found myself fixing the towel warmer again. It had shorted out just like it always did after a power surge. I was kneeling next to the utility cabinet in a cashmere sweater and heels, trying not to get grime on my pants. My phone buzzed. A notification from Lily's Instagram. She'd just posted a behind-the-scenes video from a spa in Miami, tagging it #researchtrip. It had rooftop pools, custom facials, champagne carts, and I was here, fixing wiring. I stood up slowly, feeling something tighten in my chest. My hands were shaking just a little, and for the first time in months, I didn't push it away. I let the anger in. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't even loud. It was cold, focused, like a curtain finally pulled back on a stage I'd been standing on my whole life. I wasn't a co-founder anymore. I wasn't even a partner. I was labor. Invisible, replaceable, convenient labor. That night I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, scrolling through old files, budgets I'd built, client reports I'd written, handwritten notes from the earliest days when Eden Glow was nothing but a single treatment chair and a dream I kept alive with sheer will. I found a note in my journal dated 7 years ago. Someday they'll say we wouldn't be here without her. I stared at those words for a long time. They'd never said that. Not once. I looked around my apartment. Small, rented, filled with secondhand furniture I never had time to replace. Every spare dollar I ever had I poured into the business, into us. While Lily bought luxury skincare and rebranded herself every season, I was skipping dinners and reusing toner cartridges. And still I wasn't enough. Still I was expected to smile and support, to be grateful, to keep showing up, like a loyal golden retriever waiting at the door for a pat on the head that never came. I opened my laptop, started backing up files. Not because I had a plan, but because something inside me whispered, "Start walking. Get ready. They won't save you." And this time, for once, I listened. It started with a printer jam. That's how most betrayals go, right? Not with a scream, but with something ordinary. I was in the back office trying to print out a revised payroll summary. The system had been buggy ever since they updated to Lily's new finance software. It kept stalling, crashing, misfiling things. And that afternoon it spat out half a page before groaning to a stop. I opened the tray, cleared a stuck envelope someone had loaded wrong. But as I was about to press print again, something caught my eye. A document. Folded, misaligned, clearly never meant to be printed. Its header read, "Succession Finalization Plan, effective Q3. I froze. The kind of freeze where your fingers forget how to move. I shouldn't have looked. But of course I did. Page 1 was a summary of Eden Glow Holdings' new structure. It used words like streamline vision, consolidation, leadership realignment. I scanned faster, heart pounding. Then I saw it. Full transfer of operational and equity control to Lily Cameron, effective upon brand transition date. Equity control, all of it. My name was nowhere on that page. I flipped. There were tables showing projected media value under Lily's brand, contract outlines for her as creative CEO, a clause suggesting my current role unnamed would be non-essential by Q4. I sat down. Hard. The chair creaked beneath me, or maybe that was just the sound of my body breaking, because this wasn't a shift in direction. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was removal. Sanitized. Signed. Sealed. They were erasing me, and had been for months. I looked at the prepared by line. My father's name. His signature. Dated 6 weeks ago. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My mouth went dry, my vision blurred. A faint ringing started in my ears. 6 weeks ago, I was still staying late to train new hires, still patching leaky sinks and covering spa closings during storms, still defending Lily in front of disgruntled staff who saw through her influencer persona, and behind my back they were closing the door, permanently. I leaned forward, forehead resting against the desk. I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears would come later in private when I replayed every word they'd said to me since the rebrand, every small dismissal, every "you're doing great" laced with quiet condescension. I picked up the pages. They were warm from the printer, thin, harmless looking. But in my hands they felt like weapons. Evidence, proof that I wasn't crazy. I scanned again, slower this time, and found a line that made my blood run cold. All legacy staff under Danielle Cameron to be reviewed for redundancy post-transition. Staff under me, as if I weren't even part of the new structure, just a leftover to be managed. I set the papers down, and I laughed, just once. A short, shocked, breathless sound, the kind of laugh that tastes like iron. That holds nothing but disbelief. I remembered a moment from 5 years ago, me and Lily and Dad at the grand opening of our third location. We were taking photos, and Lily had refused to stand in the middle because she didn't want her outfit cropped wrong. I'd swapped places with her without thinking. Smiled. Let her have the spotlight. I thought I was being supportive. I thought it didn't matter who stood in the middle as long as we were all in the picture. Now I knew better. They'd always been framing her as the future. And me, I was just set dressing. I looked down at the succession document one last time. And I knew. They weren't going to tell me until it was done. Until the paperwork was filed, the passwords changed, the bank accounts locked down. Until there was nothing left to fight for. Unless I moved now. unless I stopped being the daughter who waited and became the woman who prepared. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel loyal. I felt ready. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The staff meetings I was excluded from, the sudden changes in brand direction, the social media posts that announced decisions I hadn't even heard about, my mother's gentle deflections, my father's silence, and Lily, always Lily, basking in attention, in admiration, in ownership that was never earned. The succession document was in my bag. I'd folded it gently as if it were something fragile instead of a blade through the chest. But it was real. I knew now that nothing I had built was safe. Not the brand, not my job, not even my identity. So I did what I always do when I'm afraid. I got to work. At 2:17 a.m., I opened my laptop and started backing up everything. Not company records, no. That would be theft, and I wasn't stupid. But I had plenty of my own files, development plans I'd written from scratch, pitch decks I designed alone at 3 a.m., strategy notes I kept in personal folders because no one else ever wanted to review them anyway. I copied every email thread I was part of, especially the ones where I had carried whole projects by myself while Lily was on creative sabbatical. Vendor negotiations, HR correspondence, legal reviews I pushed through during COVID when we were on the verge of collapse. All of it. I organized them by date, by location, by category. I wrote memos to myself attaching screenshots and notations. I wasn't planning revenge. I was building proof. Because when people take things from you quietly, they count on you staying quiet too. And I had been, for too long. The next morning I went in early, earlier than usual, before anyone else. I unlocked my desk drawer and took out the leather-bound notebook I hadn't used in years, the one I kept during Eden Glow's first 18 months. My notes were still there, messy, handwritten, obsessive. Page after page of dreams and breakdowns and trial runs and staff issues I resolved without budget or sleep. I flipped to the back cover. Taped, there was an old photo, me and my dad standing in front of the original storefront, back when it was just a one-room operation with peeling paint and a used massage table. We were both smiling. I studied that smile. Had it been real? Or had I just wanted it to be? A knock at the glass startled me. It was Morgan, our head of operations, peeking in early. "Danielle," she mouthed. "You okay?" I nodded, smiled automatically. Just catching up. She didn't look convinced. And that's when I realized people were starting to notice. The interns who used to come to me first were now going straight to Lily's assistant. The staff who once asked for my input were being told Lily already decided. Even Morgan had been cut out of the rebranding talks, and she'd mentioned in passing how weird it felt. I made a mental note. Morgan might become a crucial witness, someone who'd seen the shift firsthand. But I didn't say anything that day. Not yet. I spent the next week collecting. Quietly. Meticulously. Screenshots of budget reports Lily had altered post-approval, marketing invoices that didn't match the actual campaigns, receipts from business trips with luxury hotel stays and zero deliverables. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it all, but I knew I had to have it, because the Danielle I'd been faithful, hopeful, naive was done. This version of me was awake. And when the fall came and I could feel it coming like a storm cloud rolling in, I wouldn't be caught off guard. I wouldn't be erased quietly. Not anymore. I sent the resignation email on a Tuesday. No subject line, no flair, just a plain text message written at 5:32 a.m. while the city was still half asleep. Subject: resignation, effective immediately, to board@edenglowgroup.com. CC. No one, body. Due to a fundamental breach of trust and a shift in organizational direction, I am resigning from my role at Eden Glow, effective immediately. No further communication is necessary. Danielle Cameron. No signature, no warm regards, no space for them to twist my words or delay my exit. I closed the laptop and stood still for a moment, just listening. There was no dramatic thunder, no internal explosion, just silence. It felt good, like a door clicking shut after being left open for too long. I walked into the office an hour later, just as Lily was arriving, iced matcha in hand, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my rent. She raised an eyebrow when she saw me. "You're in early," she said casually, pushing her sunglasses up. Late night, I didn't answer. I walked past her straight into my office and began packing. 1 box. That's all I allowed myself. Not because I had so little, but because I refused to carry any more of it with me. Photos, my personal planner, a small jade plant I'd nursed back from the dead twice, the leather notebook from our first year. Everything else, files, folders, binders I left. I wouldn't carry their legacy out the door. I wasn't their cleaner anymore. Mid-morning HR sent me a form email. Sorry to hear about your departure. Please complete the following offboarding checklist. I didn't reply. By noon, I was gone. Just like that. No farewell party, no group lunch, no branded cupcakes or slide deck with "Thank you, Danielle" in glittery fonts. And strangely, that felt right. Because the woman they'd built that company on, the one who sacrificed weekends and sanity and self-worth, had already been gone for months, maybe years. The real me had just caught up. As I walked to the parking lot, I heard the buzz starting. Morgan texted. "What's going on?" I ignored it. Another message. "Wait, did you quit?" I turned off my phone. For the rest of the day, I sat in my tiny apartment surrounded by the soft hum of nothing. No staff emergencies, no weekend event prep, no tense messages from Lily asking me to clean up some miscommunication she didn't mean. Just me. And the silence, and the email I'd sent. I stared at my box, at the notebook on top. The post-it on the front cover read in my handwriting, "This was supposed to be ours." But now I knew better. It had never been ours. It was always theirs to manipulate, to stage, to steal. I had just kept the lights on, and maybe that's why it hurt so much. Because I hadn't just built a company. I'd built a belief, a version of family, a place where effort equaled value, and they'd turned it into a theater, one where I was good enough to operate the lights but never to take the stage. That evening, the messages started pouring in, a few polite, a few confused. Then came the ones from my parents. First, short and sharp, "Dad, you could have at least spoken to us." "Mom, this is not how family behaves, Danielle." I didn't answer. Then hours later, "Dad, Eden Glow is in chaos. Clients are threatening to leave. You need to come back." That's when I knew. They still didn't get it. There was no apology, no recognition, just panic because I was no longer fixing their mess. I typed exactly 9 words in response. "Let Lily handle it. She's the heir, after all." Then I turned my phone off again. And for the first time in years, I exhaled. Not just a breath, a release. The kind that comes when you finally realize you were never the problem. You were the foundation. And they had just kicked you out of the house you built. I didn't need to check the news. The first sign came from the silence. The usual barrage of notifications from staff channels, status updates, client messages, marketing quick wins vanished. No 8 a.m. Slack pings, no frantic group texts begging for guidance. And then the messages started again. But this time they weren't asking for help. They were begging for context. "Did you really leave? Is it true you're not coming back?" "Danielle, the sole client, is threatening to pull out." I didn't reply. I just watched. Like someone watching a train they were almost on. Lily had stepped in as the de facto face of Eden Glow. PR emails went out full of empty words. Bold new direction, streamlined leadership, creative freedom. She posted a selfie on launch day, smiling with 2 white teeth, captioned, "Building something bold." Founder. Energy. Shag glow up. The post went viral for all the wrong reasons. The comments weren't kind. Didn't Danielle build this brand? Where is Danielle? This feels off. And behind the scenes, chaos. The Korean distributor we'd spent 3 years building a relationship with pulled their product display overnight. The wellness retreat in Sedona canceled our collaboration after Lily botched the prep call, confusing the founder's name, and trying to pitch a crystal line we didn't even carry. And then came Global Balance, our largest client, our anchor. They requested a new account manager for their rebranding campaign, but no one on staff knew the full scope of that project because I'd let it alone. The files were still there, but the strategy was gone. I'd kept it in my head, trusted memory over systems because I thought I was staying forever. Oops, they tried to reconstruct it. They couldn't. And finally, inevitably, the call came. From my father. His voice was tight, controlled, but there was something new in it this time. Not authority, not manipulation. Fear. "Danielle," he said, "we need your help. It's unraveling. Global Balance is about to pull out, and without them," I waited. No apology, no acknowledgement, just desperation. I let the silence grow heavy. Finally, I said it. "Let Lily handle it, Dad. She's the heir after all." There was a pause. Then, "You're being cruel." Cruel. That word hit me harder than I expected. For a split second, it almost worked. The guilt swelled, the echo of years spent being the good one, the fixer, the peacekeeper. But it passed, because I wasn't being cruel. I was being done. "You made your choice," I said. "Now live in it." I hung up, and I didn't cry. I just sat on my couch, the same one I'd collapsed onto 1,000 nights after 14-hour days, and felt still. The next morning, Morgan called. She didn't ask questions. She didn't beg me to come back. She just said, "They're drowning." I already knew. Clients were leaving. Staff was quitting. Lily tried to host a webinar and forgot to unmute herself for half the presentation. And the worst part, she blamed the team, called them resistant to change, fired 3 junior staffers the same day. It was unraveling faster than I thought, but I didn't gloat. I didn't post a cryptic status. I didn't even share screenshots, because this wasn't revenge, it was math. Eden Glow had always been more than a brand. It was my labor, my soul. And now that I'd left, there was nothing left holding it together. No glue, no spine, just glitter and pretense. The world was finally seeing it, and I didn't need to say a word. It started as a simple trip to clear my head. I had driven out to the old house, the one my grandfather built with his own hands back when Eden Glow was still just a dream scribbled in a leather-bound notebook. No one lived there now. My parents had moved downtown years ago, trading creaky floorboards for a smart home condo with mood lighting and automatic shades. But the old house was still in the family, still filled with things they hadn't touched in years, memories they didn't need anymore. Boxes were stacked high in the study, gathering dust. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just something real, something from before. Before Eden Glow was a brand, before Lily became a billboard, before I became invisible. I found it in the bottom drawer of my grandfather's desk, a journal. Leather cover worn soft with time, the scent of old paper pipe tobacco and cedar drifted up as I opened it. He had beautiful handwriting, looping, careful, deliberate. There were pages of notes about formulations, ethics, distribution networks, quotes from books, reflections on running a business with integrity. But then tucked between 2 pages, dated decades apart, was a folded yellowing sheet. Typed. Signed. Stamped. It was a pre-incorporation agreement. A relic from the earliest days before Eden Glow was even Eden Glow. At first glance, it looked like a standard partnership clause, but then I saw it. A paragraph in dense legal language. A clause that read, "In the event that ownership is transferred without documented consent or fair compensation to any primary contributing party, such transfer may be legally challenged and subject to neutral trust evaluation." In the margin in my grandfather's handwriting, Danielle contributed labor before age 18. No one should be erased. Protect builders. I blinked, read it again, then again. My name, in his hand. He'd seen me, even back then. The summers I spent in the lab organizing ingredient drawers, learning pH levels before I learned algebra, the early launches I helped pack boxes for, the customer notes I wrote by hand. He had remembered. And more than that, he'd protected me. I felt something break open in my chest, a soundless crack like pressure finally giving way. This wasn't just a sentimental note. It was leverage, maybe even legal footing. I grabbed my phone and called the only person I trusted in moments like this, Robert. He'd been my mentor for years, a quiet, principled man who had stepped back from the company once he saw where my parents were heading. He picked up on the first ring. "Danielle." His voice was calm but alert. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said, breathless. "Or everything. I think I found something. My grandfather, he wrote me into an old agreement. It might be enforceable." A pause. Then, "Bring it to me. Now." Within the hour I was in his office, the document spread across a wooden desk that smelled faintly of tea and polish. He read in silence. His eyes didn't widen, his breath didn't hitch. But when he looked up, something had shifted in his gaze. "This changes everything. Is it valid? It's old, but clean. And given your documented contributions, your name and product patents, your years of unpaid labor, it strengthens the case." "What case?" He folded his hands. "A legal challenge to the ownership transfer, possibly even compensation for past labor. At the very least, they'll be forced into discovery." My heart thudded, not from fear, from clarity. It was the first time in weeks, maybe years, that I felt like I wasn't just reacting. I was standing, grounded. I reached for the document again, running my fingers over the ink. My grandfather hadn't left me power. He'd left me truth. And now I had a choice: stay silent or use it. The next morning, I stood outside a glass-paneled office downtown, heart beating like I was walking into a courtroom, not a consultation. The plaque on the door read, "Harrison and Cole Business and Family Law." Robert had made the introduction. He said, "You don't need fire. You need precision. This man knows both." Mr. Harrison was nothing like the lawyers I'd pictured. No shark smile, no cheap suit, no fake bravado. He wore a wool vest, rimless glasses, and had the quiet intensity of someone who had already thought 10 steps ahead before you even walked in. I handed him the folder, the pre-incorporation document, my work logs, the patent filings, emails, everything I'd gathered over the years, without even realizing I might need them. He took his time reading. And then he said, "You're not bringing a case out of anger, Ms. Cameron. You're bringing a case out of merit, out of truth." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. He tapped the clause with his pen. "Your grandfather left a paper trail most people only dream of. The handwritten margin note helps, but the clause itself is enforceable on its own. Even after all these years, especially because of all these years," he said calmly, "you've poured time, labor, and intellectual property into this company. They cut you out while directly benefiting from that. That's not just emotional betrayal, that's legal exposure." He laid out the plan in clear, surgical steps. First, we'd issue a formal notice of intent to challenge the ownership transfer. That would freeze any pending deals, force internal audits, and begin the process of discovery, meaning my parents and Lily would have to produce documents, financials, communications. Then we'd file a claim for unpaid wages tied to the years I worked without contract or compensation. And finally, depending on what surfaced during discovery, we could open the door to civil damages, fraudulent misrepresentation, misuse of intellectual property, even breach of fiduciary duty. It was clinical, clean, professional. But beneath the surface, I felt something raw uncoiling in me. Not rage, not vengeance, just justice. I wasn't trying to burn Eden Glow down. I was trying to reclaim the pieces of myself they'd buried beneath their brand. Mr. Harrison looked at me carefully. "You understand what this means, don't you? This won't be quiet. It won't be easy. You will be painted as the villain, as the ungrateful daughter, the jealous sister." I nodded. "They've already painted me as that." He didn't smile. He just said, "Then let's show them who you really are." The paperwork moved quickly. Within 48 hours, my name appeared on legal filings. The notice went out. Registered, tracked, delivered. I imagined the moment they opened it, my father's face paling, my mother's hand flying to her mouth, Lily scoffing, and then Googling my lawyer's name. They wouldn't panic right away. They'd deny, dismiss, mock. But that was fine, because I wasn't doing this for their reaction. I was doing it because for the first time in my life, I had proof that I mattered. And now the system they'd used to erase me would be the same one I'd use to make myself visible again. It didn't take long for the blowback to begin. 3 days after the legal notice was served, my inbox lit up with alerts from Google, mentions of my name, comments under Eden Glow's latest posts. A blog entry from some beauty influencer Lily had once taken to Paris, titled, "When Blood Turns Bitter, What Happened to Danielle Cameron?" I knew they'd retaliate. I just didn't think they'd go this public this fast. The company's official statement was vague, but pointed. "We are deeply saddened by recent actions taken by a former family member who chose litigation over loyalty." They'd called me former family, not even subtle. Then came the posts. Photos from my childhood me in pigtails, me holding Lily's hand at some award event, me asleep on the lab couch in a hoodie at 15, juxtaposed with captions like, "We raised her with love. We gave her everything. We didn't expect her to try and destroy us." Comments flooded in. Some sympathetic, most not. Typical entitled millennial, ungrateful. What kind of daughter sues her own parents? It was surgical, coordinated, and disgusting. My parents, always so curated, so controlled, were now weaponizing nostalgia, weaponizing their image as generous founders and doting parents. Lily's post was the worst. She stood on the Eden Glow HQ balcony, wind in her hair, captioned, "When people can't build their own legacy, they try to tear down yours. I'll keep glowing." It had over 80,000 likes in under 12 hours. She knew exactly what she was doing. The real venom came in private. A voicemail from my mother, her voice trembling not with guilt, but with practiced devastation. "Danielle, honey, what are you doing? You're breaking this family. This is not who you are. You're letting some outsider poison your mind. We made you. We trusted you." My father's was colder. "You don't know what you've started. You think this makes you strong. This makes you disposable. You want a war. You'll lose everything. You'll be nothing." Their voices still knew how to find the cracks in me, still knew how to push just hard enough to make me question myself, but not this time, because I had Mr. Harrison, and I had the truth. He reminded me daily, if needed, "They are trying to make you feel emotional so you'll back down. Don't. We are in the right. And they know it." I focused on building my case. Every invoice, every email where I was the sole contact for major clients, every instance of unpaid overtime, every internal memo I had drafted but wasn't credited for. We submitted requests for financial disclosures, requested marketing reports with itemized spending, asked for communication logs between Lily and the board. That's when the resistance started. Delays, dodges, documents lost. A declaration from their legal team stating I had no contractual claim to the company. But that was the thing. I had something stronger than a contract. I had pattern. I had labor. I had a grandfather's signature on a clause meant to protect me. And I had time. I wasn't afraid of a slow fight anymore, because I'd been at war for 10 years and just didn't know it. At least now I was fighting with my eyes open. And this time I had a name. I had power. And I was finally using both. The real shift came during discovery. It started with a file Mr. Harrison's team pulled from Eden Glow's public financial records, something buried in plain sight. A line item listed as client development, miscellaneous, totaling $178,000. We cross-referenced it with Lily's social media during the same quarter. Her work trip to the Maldives, private villas, designer collaborations, rooftop cocktail events with hashtags like #GlowGetaway and #BossLife. None of it matched actual client engagement. None of it had receipts. Mr. Harrison said it plainly. This isn't client development. It's personal indulgence passed off as company expense. If they falsified these documents to shareholders, we're looking at a serious fraud case. We dug deeper. A marketing agency on paper hired for brand strategy had issued a monthly invoice of $22,500. But the agency didn't exist. Its listed address was a UPS mailbox. The website was a landing page with a stock photo of palm trees. When we traced the payment account, it led to a shell company registered under a trust managed by Lily. It was blatant. And it wasn't just one instance. There were travel reimbursements for team retreats that were really spa weekends for her, and a few influencer friends. Paid speaking engagements that never happened. Apparel budgets that coincided perfectly with her wardrobe hauls. She had treated Eden Glow like her personal ATM, and the board, stacked with loyalists handpicked by my parents, had either turned a blind eye or genuinely didn't know. But now Now it was all on paper. Mr. Harrison moved quickly to subpoena internal emails, and that's when the worst of it surfaced. Conversations between Lily and my mother. Cold, calculated, cruel. One thread dated 3 years back read, "If Danielle sees the numbers, she'll start asking questions. Better to keep her in the lab feeling important, but boxed in." Another one between Lily and my dad sent the week before the ownership transfer was finalized. "She doesn't need equity. She needs praise. Throw her another strategic lead title and she'll stay quiet. They weren't just excluding me, they were manipulating me to stay obedient, to stay small." When I read those words, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt hollow, like a silence so deep it echoed inside me. But then something unexpected happened. People started reaching out. First, quiet messages from former interns and junior staff I used to supervise. "Danielle, I saw what's happening. Just want you to know you were the only reason I stayed sane during that job." Then came one from a former senior chemist. "I left Eden Glow because I couldn't stand watching them take your work and hand the credit to Lily. If you need someone to testify, I will." The tide was turning. Even the industry press caught wind. An article dropped in an indie beauty magazine titled "The Glow Behind the Brand Was Eden Glow Built on Silent Labor." It didn't name me directly, but the implication was clear. The comments were different this time. People were asking questions. Some were defending me. And that was enough. Enough to remind me that the truth, no matter how long it's buried, has a pulse of its own. And now, it was beating louder than ever. The mediation room wasn't a courtroom, but it might as well have been. Fluorescent lights, unforgiving white walls, a long rectangular table where reputations would rise or fall. Seated across from me were my parents, rigid, tight-lipped, and Lily in a crisp cream blazer, expressionless except for the occasional twitch in her jaw. To their left sat their lawyers. To my right, Mr. Harrison, calm as always, flanked by his junior associate, who had spent the last week indexing every single piece of evidence we had. Also present was a representative from one of Eden Glow's biggest clients, Luxara, a global beauty distributor, who'd requested to attend once rumors of financial mismanagement surfaced. And then, surprisingly, came the late additions Aunt June and Uncle Peter extended family, once neutral, now curious. The mediator, an older woman with kind but weary eyes, began with formalities. Then Mr. Harrison stood. No theatrics, no performance, just facts. He began with the pre-incorporation agreement, zooming in on the clause my grandfather had handwritten. Then slowly, methodically, he laid out the timeline. My years of unpaid labor, the intellectual property I had developed, the manipulation documented in emails, the fraudulent expenses, the shell companies. Each document projected onto the screen behind us, each line item matched with a screenshot, each lie unraveling in plain view, and then the emails. Pixel by pixel, sentence by sentence, they appeared on the screen. Lily's messages, my parents' replies, lines like, "Just keep her busy and silent. She's a tool, not a partner." A ripple went through the room. Aunt June gasped. The Luxara representative leaned forward. Lily's composure cracked first. She stood, hands shaking, eyes wide. "This is twisted. You're all against me." He's making it look worse than it was. But Mr. Harrison didn't flinch. He simply advanced to the next slide. A breakdown of her marketing charges matched against a luxury boutique's invoice for 6 designer handbags. Then another, her retreat to Bali backed by Eden Glow funds. Lily snapped. "He always tried to make me look bad," she shrieked, pointing at me. "None of you saw what I went through. I deserved it. I carried the brand. I built the image." He just sat in labs and acted superior. The room was silent. My mother placed a trembling hand on Lily's arm. "Sweetheart, please." But it was too late. The outburst was raw, unfiltered, and damning. The Luxara representative stood. "I think we've seen enough. Eden Glow no longer aligns with our values." And with that, he walked out. It was the sound of years of partnerships crumbling in a single sentence. My father looked like he'd aged a decade in a moment. His gaze was glassy, sunken. My mother whispered something I couldn't hear. But I didn't need to. Because I wasn't there for their reactions. I was there to reclaim what was mine. And by the look on Mr. Harrison's face, I already had. The court's decision came just 2 weeks after the mediation. Swift, clear, unapologetic. The judge ruled in my favor on all 3 counts. 1. Recognition of my labor as essential to the company's success. 2. Violation of the pre-incorporation agreement clause protecting contributors. 3. A decade's worth of unpaid labor with damages. But it wasn't just about the money. Though the compensation awarded to me was substantial, more than I ever imagined it was, the words in the ruling that hit deeper than any number. This court finds that Ms. Danielle Cameron was systematically excluded from the enterprise she helped build, and that such exclusion was not only unethical, but demonstrably deliberate. I read that line over and over 1,000 times. Deliberately excluded. It was the acknowledgement I had craved my whole life. The irony. It took legal action to finally hear the truth spoken aloud. But the fallout didn't end there. The court also ordered Eden Glow placed under emergency corporate review, citing evidence of systemic misuse of funds and breach of fiduciary duties. That clause triggered an automatic freeze on the company's assets. Within 72 hours, operations were suspended, product launches halted, warehouses locked down, payroll stopped, suppliers began to withdraw. The board, those loyalists handpicked by my parents, resigned en masse within days, trying to avoid personal liability. And then came the headlines, Eden Glow implodes after family lawsuit. Beauty empire built on exploitation, Instagram versus reality, the fall of a skincare dynasty. The media had a field day. Lily, who once graced glossy covers with captions like, "The face of a generation," now saw her name trending for all the wrong reasons. She tried to post through the chaos quotes about resilience and rising stronger, but the comments turned brutal. You stole from your own sister. Your entire career was built on lies. Glow, more like fraud. Then her sponsorships began pulling out. Brand partners distanced themselves. Influencer friends unfollowed in silence. Even the beauty podcast she co-hosted went on indefinite hiatus. Behind the scenes, Mr. Harrison negotiated a deal that avoided criminal charges, but only just. Lily was required to pay back a significant portion of the misused funds through asset liquidation. The penthouse gone. The Porsche gone. The investment portfolio she bragged about on panels frozen. She filed for personal bankruptcy within a month. As for my parents, they took the loss in different ways. My father remained outwardly defiant, speaking of corporate overreach and family betrayal, but it was all bluster. His reputation in the business community was obliterated. No one would touch him. He lost his seat on multiple advisory boards. His keynote speech at the Global Innovation Summit canceled. My mother, however, retreated. She deleted her social media, stopped attending charity galas, and the last I heard, she'd taken to blaming bad legal advice for everything. They sold the house I grew up in. Silently, quietly, in shame. I didn't celebrate, not in the way people might think. There was no popping of champagne, no dramatic mic drop moment, just a stillness, a quiet, deep knowing that what had been done in the dark had finally come to light. And for once, I wasn't the one left carrying the weight of someone else's choices. They had built their legacy on silence, control, and appearances. But you can only build so much on rot before the whole thing caves in. And when it finally did, the only thing standing was the truth. And me. With the settlement finalized and Eden Glow disbanded, I stood at a strange crossroads. I had won. But what now? For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in deadlines, expectations, or emotional quicksand. The silence was foreign, a new kind of blank canvas. I rented a small office space downtown. Just 2 rooms, plenty of sunlight, and no lingering ghosts. I called it Anchor Theory. The name wasn't random. It symbolized what I'd needed all along, something steady, something real, a business rooted in transparency, fairness, and actual science. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted integrity. At first, I started alone consulting for indie skincare brands that didn't have the budget for flashy influencers, but cared deeply about their formulas. I offered formulation audits, ingredient education, and product development advice. No buzzwords, no pseudoscience. Word spread. Clients came not because I promised miracles, but because I didn't. I wasn't trying to be the next beauty mogul. I just wanted to do the work quietly, competently, and with purpose. Robert, my old mentor from Eden Glow, joined as my strategic advisor. We met once a week over coffee. Never about power, always about values. I knew you'd build something better, he told me one morning, stirring honey into his tea. You just needed to let go of trying to fix something that was designed to fail you. He was right. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing myself every single day. And people noticed. Former colleagues reached out, some apologizing for staying silent when they saw how I was treated. Others asked if they could join Anchor Theory. I hired slowly. Only people who cared about ethics over aesthetics. Scientists, not influencers. Listeners, not ladder climbers. Together, we created something rare, a company that felt human. I wasn't trying to prove my worth to anyone anymore. I had already done that. Now I was building for me, for the version of myself that once sat in a lab at midnight, eyes stinging, believing hard work alone would earn love. She deserved better, and I was finally giving it to her. Months passed. The rhythm of my life changed. It was no longer driven by panic or guilt. I didn't wake up bracing for another passive-aggressive email, another urgent call that masked emotional blackmail. Instead, I woke up to silence. Real silence. The kind that lets you breathe. I moved into a small loft near the river. Nothing fancy, but full of light and air and peace. On weekends, I walked to the farmer's market. I cooked again, real meals, not cold takeout eaten over spreadsheets. I rediscovered old playlists, long-forgotten hobbies, quiet moments. I even started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand the damage they'd left behind and how to make sure it never defined me again. And slowly, something remarkable happened. I started letting people in. First old friends I'd lost touch with, those who had stepped back when things got messy, but now returned with warmth and patience. Then new friends, colleagues at Anchor Theory, who saw me not as the girl who sued her family, but as Danielle. Just Danielle. One of them was Eli, a branding consultant we hired for a campaign. Thoughtful. Steady. He asked questions no one had asked me in years, not about work, but about who I was outside of it. He didn't try to fix me. He listened. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to perform to be loved. We took things slow. Walks, long talks, quiet dinners, no drama, no power games, just presence. One night, as we watched the city lights ripple across the water, he looked at me and said, "You don't have to earn rest, Danielle. You already have." I didn't cry. But something loosened in my chest. That old knot, the one tied with years of needing to be enough, finally began to unravel. I was starting to feel free. And that freedom didn't come from winning a court case. It came from no longer needing anything from the people who once held my worth hostage. They could never take that from me again. It was a charity gala, one of those annual community events where everyone in the industry showed up dressed in muted elegance, holding champagne flutes and networking through polite laughter. I hadn't planned on going, but Eli had been invited to speak about ethical branding, and I wanted to support him. I wore a simple black dress. No brand name, no statement earrings. Just me, quiet and present. The ballroom shimmered in warm golds and low jazz. As I stood near the back, sipping sparkling water, I spotted them. My parents. And Lily. Across the room. Thinner. Paler. Their smiles tight. Postures rigid, eyes constantly scanning the crowd as if afraid someone might actually see them. They hadn't seen me yet, but I watched them for a long moment. They looked small. Not physically, but something in their presence had changed. The confidence, the polish, the air of being untouchable, it was all gone. Now they moved like people who were tolerated, not admired. Ghosts in a space they used to own. Then my mother saw me. She froze. My father turned next face, falling into that familiar mix of disappointment and disbelief. And Lily didn't even pretend. Her eyes narrowed, then dropped. None of them moved. I didn't either. There was no need to. I wasn't there for them. They didn't hold power over me anymore, not through shame, not through guilt, not even through apology. I didn't need their words. I had already given myself the only closure that mattered. I had survived. I had rebuilt. I had become someone who didn't need revenge to feel whole. Eli appeared beside me, offering a small smile as he touched my elbow gently. "Ready to go?" he asked. I nodded. And without another glance, I turned my back to the people who once defined my entire sense of self. I didn't leave the gala angry or triumphant. I left free. Truly, finally free. I used to think healing would feel like a grand moment, like fireworks, or applause, or some cinematic closure where everything suddenly makes sense. But that night, walking out of the gala, I realized it wasn't that at all. Healing felt like a quiet breath I hadn't known I was holding. It felt like not looking back, like not needing to explain, like standing beside someone who chose me for who I am, not for what I could give or prove or sacrifice. It felt like me finally becoming enough for myself. There were no dramatic goodbyes, no letters unsent, no revenge left to plot. Just a simple truth: I had stopped waiting for them to love me the way I deserved, and in doing so, I had given that love to myself. That was the real legacy, not the business, not the lawsuits, not the settlement money, but the quiet, unshakable certainty that I was never the broken one. I was just the one who finally chose to walk away. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, the one who gave more, tried harder, stayed longer, only to be met with silence, dismissal, or cruelty masked as concern, I want you to hear me now. You're not broken, you're not too much, and you're not imagining it. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people who were supposed to protect you, raise you, choose you. But when they didn't, when they favored convenience over connection, control over care, you did the most radical thing anyone can do. You survived. And maybe you're still there, still hoping they'll change, still shrinking yourself just to keep the peace. I get it. But let me tell you this. The peace you're trying to protect, it isn't real if it costs you your self-worth. You don't have to earn love by bleeding for it. You don't have to stay loyal to people who only see your value when it serves them. You don't owe them your silence or your future. You are allowed to leave the room even if your whole life was built in that room. You are allowed to close the door and build something new, softer, stronger, yours. And when they come back, not with remorse but with regret that they lost control, you don't have to open that door again, not out of bitterness, but out of peace. Because you don't need revenge, you need you, and that is more than enough, is more